Okay, we're here with Cory Schaffer. Pretty good night of fights tonight. Your thoughts on the fights tonight?
I thought it was great, very entertaining, very competitive. Although the Western Canadian team really was dominant, the Eastern Canadians were competitive in each match. Just that the nods went to the West today, but exciting show, well produced, great opportunity for a lot of young fighters.
Were you surprised how good the fighters from Victoria were?
No, not at all. I mean, because I've worked with Stan Petrick before, I've worked with Wally Petrovic. I know they have a reputation of being tough, very technically skilled, and having a great attitude. So I knew they'd be really prepared. This is not the first event, essentially, the ISK has done here. Gabriel won the Canadian title, then he won the North American title, both with 2 quick knockouts. That's what qualified him for the world title, so I came here ready to see that type of performance.
We saw some impressive victories today. I want to ask you, it's going to be a little bit of a hard question.
Okay.
We had a referee come in here in the world title fight. It looked like a couple of those knockdowns were not really knockdowns. Your thoughts on those?
I think that, ultimately, the guy in the ring who is the person to make the best decision on that. Right. And I put my faith in a guy who has refereed, dozens of world title fights. He's in the ring. He's got the best view. He makes the call. In this case, whether they were knockdowns or not knockdowns would not have affected the outcome of the fight because Gabriel pitched a shutout, won every single round. From my point of view, honestly, I think that of the 3 knockdowns, I thought 2 of them were questionable. But again, like I said, I put my faith in the guy that's in the ring. He's the professional. He's the best person to make that decision, and that's the way it rolls.
You do a lot of certification for judges as well as referees. How important is it? I mean, referees and judges get a lot of slack all the time. They get beat up all the time in the press. How important is it for reporters and fans to understand where the judges and referees are coming from?
Well, I think that it would be great because it would they would cut the officials a little bit of a slack. A lot of times the criticism that comes from journalists and come from fans is not justified simply because they don't have a real understanding of the nature of scoring, the established criteria, what the judges are evaluating, and in what order of priority. So it's easy to stand out there and criticize, especially when there's a qualitative difference between watching a fight and judging a fight. If you're a journalist, you're watching it, you're recording, you're taking pictures, you're doing things. You get a different impression than someone that is spending 100% of their time and 100% of their effort focused on the action, concentrating on the criteria that they're evaluating, and putting it in context of the scoring system. It really is a different experience. There's only 3 people in the room that are really focused on scoring the fight. Everybody has an agenda. So, honestly, I hear people criticize the judges all the time. The fans do it. Hey, they paid their money. They're entitled. But honestly, I put very little stock in it because it just is really not legitimate for the most part.
Let's talk about mixed martial arts. You've recently formed a new rule set for mixed martial arts. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Not a new rule set. The unified rules are accepted almost, well, let's say worldwide, but throughout North America as being the standardized rules for regulating mixed martial arts. I've worked the last 3 months on putting together what I think is the first really thorough judge's manual. It's a written judge's manual that I'm now documenting with rounds, and it's an effort to try to contribute to the sport by elevating the judging, by establishing a sense of consistency, consistent parameters. There are a lot of great judges, not enough great judges. So the goal was to figure out the great judges, what are they doing differently, and how do we teach that to the judges that are just coming up that we need to improve. This document, it's about 30 pages because the sport requires that level of detail. It's designed to help the judges to define and objectify what is it we're evaluating, what's important, more or less, and how to compare that in order to get everybody on the same page so that the scores are accurate, fair, and consistent.
Between kickboxing and mixed martial arts is a relatively new sport. How difficult is it to create a manual like this for mixed martial arts?
Well, I've written judges' manuals for K1, for World Combat League, for kickboxing, and I gotta tell you, for MMA, it was 3 times as difficult. Generally, in boxing and kickboxing, in K1, you're comparing apples to apples when you're evaluating the action. Both guys are going to essentially kick, punch, and knee. Or in boxing, they're going to punch like that. But when you're trying to evaluate, one guy is being effective kicking and punching, the other guy is being more effective in the clinch against the cage and doing what we call dirty or inside boxing, or he's being more effective with the ground fighting. better at the takedowns, using a good transitional positioning strategy to advance to a submission. It really is tough because the thing about MMA is there are so many different ways and so many different ways to lose. And that means that evaluating the action is really difficult because if a submission doesn't occur or a knockout, you're still evaluating all those different things at once, trying to compare and contrast this guy's effectiveness at this versus this guy's effectiveness at that. My goal was to create a kind of a paradigm that rises above it to make it easier for judges to evaluate general principles, not just the individual techniques.
We're seeing MMA, like I said, it's a fairly new sport. What are your thoughts on MMA as a whole?
It rocks. And let's face it, the public has spoken. I mean, you look at the pay-per-view buys, you look at the live audience, you know, it's safe. Safe. It's a combat sport. It ain't table tennis. Okay, so we just say it's safe. I say relatively safe. I mean, let's face it, probably more injuries per capita in high school football. Certainly more maybe in hockey or lacrosse. So it is a relatively safe, fair, well-regulated sport. It's exciting. Like I said, the public has spoken in terms of the attendance of live audience and the pay-per-view. MMA, here to stay.
Yeah. If you could say one thing to maybe the journalists or the fans out there who don't really understand judges, what it takes to be a judge, what kind of training it takes to be a judge, as well as a referee, what would you like to say? If you have an open mic right now, you can say anything.
Well, to the journalists, I would say, listen, you guys are huge contributors. Without you, there is no sport. I mean, you guys are huge for the promotion of the sport, and you play a critical role. But so do the officials. And you know what? I hang with officials. They're a brotherhood. And I never hear the officials hanging around and criticizing the journalists because they don't know your job. They don't know your job. You know, and if I did, I'd say, you know what, go to journalism school, sit down, try to write an article, try to get a good photograph, try to get a good video, and then maybe you can appreciate how difficult it is. And I would just encourage journalists, you know what, if you really, if you want to advance your position, maybe think about just attending a judge's clinic, whether you're going to do it or not. Attend a referee's meeting. That education, I think, will make you a better journalist. It'll also, it'll educate you more, and I think that the journalists that do that will be in a position where they're less likely to criticize because they better understand exactly what it is that the officials are doing, in terms of the details. So that I think that would be it.
How about to the fans?
The fans, you know what? When the fan pays their money, they have every right to complain, to cheer, whatever it is. It's all good as long as you keep turning out, supporting the shows, watching it on TV, and elevating these athletes with your praise. Fans, it's all good. Keep it up.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate that today.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me.